It seems like there's a lot of stories of dragons and giant worms in ancient Britain. I have covered many of these stories before, and I do find them fascinating. This next case happened in Durham County in northeast England. And as with most legends, there are different variations to the story. But basically one day a young man, John Lambton, decided to miss church one Sunday so he can go fishing. And while he was walking to the river, he was warned by an old man that no good can come from missing church. But John didn't take any notice of this old man's warning, and he decided to go fishing anyway. And while church service was in session, he caught a very small worm with a salamander-like head. And instead of throwing it back in the water, he decided to keep it, and he threw it in a well that was close to his family's estate. And as time went by, John forgot all about his pet worm, and he joined the Crusades. And while he was gone, this little worm escaped the well, and it grew into a monster. It terrorized the villagers, ate livestock, prevented cows from producing milk, and even abducted small children. Now, many of the bravest villagers tried to kill this worm, but none prevailed. And some were able to cut off huge chunks from this worm, but it just grew back. Then after all these failed attempts at slaying this monster, John's father decided to try to sedate it instead. And he succeeded, and this became a daily ritual. Every morning, while the worm was sleeping coiled around Worm Hill, the villagers would sedate it. Now the worm was still able to defend itself. It wasn't passed out or anything. It just wasn't running around town all the time causing complete chaos. And even though it was sedated, the villagers still could not kill it. Knights from all across the realm came to this location seeking glory, and every single one of them lost their lives trying to kill the worm. Then John Lambton, the man responsible for fishing this worm out of the river, returned home from the Crusades, and he decided to fight it. But first, he wanted to seek guidance from a local witch. And the witch told John to cover his armor in spearheads and to fight the worm in the river where he had caught it 7 years earlier. Now before John left, the witch also told him that after he kills the worm, he needs to kill the first thing that he sees, or else his entire family would be cursed for 9 generations. And this scared John just as much as the worm itself. So he told his father that if he was able to defeat the worm, he would blow his horn. And he told his father that when he blew his horn, he wanted him to release his dog so he could kill it to prevent his family from being cursed. So the next morning the villagers didn't sedate the worm, and John was waiting for it by the river. And the worm wasted no time. It's as if it knew that John was waiting for it down by the river. And right away the worm wrapped itself around John and tried to squeeze him to death. Now it was a good thing that John visited the witch before he tried to slay this creature, because she gave John great advice. The spike she told John to attach to his armor killed the worm. Now when John blew his horn, his father was just so happy that the worm was finally dead that he ran to the river, forgetting to release the dogs. And when John saw his father instead of his dog, he was very upset because he was unable to kill his dad, and the Lambton curse was born. Now what's interesting about this case is there are documented reports, according to the articles that I've read, of John's family, the Lambtons, dying very young. And that's what the witch told John, that none of his descendants would die of old age, warm in their beds for 9 generations. Henry Lambton died in his carriage crossing Lambton Bridge in 1761, and many others died in war. Some even drowned in the same river where John caught the worm. Now of course this could be all just coincidence, because not everyone is lucky enough to die of old age, especially in the past. But I do find this legend fascinating because there are just so many stories about giant worms and dragons coming from this time period. And it does make me wonder what really happened. Could we have really lived side by side with giant worms just a couple of 100 years ago, and somehow science just hasn't discovered this yet? And if not, what really happened here in this small town in northeast England? Until next time, this is Paranormal Junkie. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.